So yeah, I'm going to present a paper on pivotal tuning watermarking for pre-trained image generators. And I'm a PhD student at the University of Waterloo with Florian and Kerschbaum. So imagine you are a provider who is trusted, and you have some data set, you train a generator, and now you want to provide that generator to some potentially untrusted users. Now what these users might be doing is they might abuse access to your generator to generate deepfakes. And these deepfakes, they can erode trust in digital media. So we've had a lot of examples of this already happening. For example, here, this happened like a month and a half ago for the Ukraine-Russia war, where a lot of disinformation is spread about fake explosions, fake invasions, and so forth. But also, personalized attacks are possible with these kind of deepfakes, where even the FBI, a month ago, has issued a warning on what they call sextortion, where essentially I create porn of people that I know, and then I threaten them to release that to the public, basically pretending, okay, you did this porn. So what can we do against it? So the first step is always to draft legislation. And in 2021, the EU already started doing this, where they said that there should be an obligation to disclose that the content is generated. And if you look into OpenAI's terms of use, they also say that it's against their TOS to represent output from their system as if it was human-generated. Now, very recently, this has gotten a lot of steam, where 7 companies visited the White House, OpenAI and others, and they pledged to watermark their AI content for safety reasons. So, solutions to this problem of controlling misuse can be mapped onto 2 dimensions. So number 1 is how capable is the model that I provide? What can this model do? And number 2, and this is often overlooked, is how much trust does the user need to give to their providers? Probably there are some people here in the audience that don't use ChatGPT for transparency reasons, because what happens with your data, right? This is unknown. So in the very beginning, there was this idea that we just don't release the models. Like if the model's too powerful, too scary, we don't release it. And there's a lot of examples, for example, with Imagen by Google or GigaGAN by Adobe, where they just don't release the model, and there's replication attempts out there right now. Now, if you look to the top left here, and top left both, top right for me, we can map this point on the model capabilities and the trust. So in this case, there's no trust required, but there's also no capability. Now, a second approach is to do a staged release. Basically, I give you a model that has been developed 2 or 3 years ago. This model isn't powerful. We have a lot of detectors for it. And what this does is now you have more capability, you have more access to the model. And also, if it's an open release, you don't require any trust because you can run the model essentially locally. Now, the third one that is used, that's basically the state-of-the-art solution by OpenAI, is a closed release. So they host the model behind a black box, and then they retain the rights to monitor all the queries and store them for 30 days to monitor for abuse or misuse that can be detected online. Now, for the first time, this is a solution that actually gives you a lot of capabilities, but also it requires trust for the aforementioned reasons. And so I've drawn a dashed lines here at the model capability because they don't give you the entire model. There's what they call a safety filter, right? Which probably everyone who used ChatGPT has encountered the sequence as an AI language model, I cannot, and then whatever. Now, another solution that has been very popular in the past was deepfake detectors. So this is basically guided by the idea that generated and real content are different. There's some artifacts in the generated content that I can use to classify them. Now, the problem is that adaptive attacks are possible if this detector is known. Also, OpenAI just pulled back their detector because it's so ineffective. And as these models become better at and more realistic at generating content, this doesn't seem a promising solution. So instead, there's watermarking. And so watermarking is this idea that I trade in a little bit of model capability and also a little bit of trust, which I'll explain in a bit, by modifying the medium to embed a message. Now, this message could be personalized. It could have your personal information on it, right? You wouldn't know about that, But essentially, if you were, let's say, to use a Reddit account, post something online that contains a watermark, you don't know about the watermark, essentially OpenAI or whoever owns the key to this watermark will now know that you are the owner of this account. So there's some trust, because you can also do watermarking without an individualized key, but you get almost all of the model capability. So it's a promising solution that is, like I said, now gaining steam. Now I want to zoom out a little bit and basically explain a little bit about watermarking, because when I talk to people, they weren't very clear about this. So watermarking has 3 steps. First is a key generation. How do I encode information into the medium? The second is embedding. How do I change the medium? So I take a message and I change the medium, and now this medium contains the message. And finally, extraction, which is the reverse process. Now, our work considers the key generation. So we make the key generation learnable and not static, which hasn't been done before as we do it. So to keep at that zoomed out bird's eye view, there's like all the watermarking that exists for these models, or most of it, is white box and black box watermarking, where we assume that we have parameters or input-output behaviors. So if we have either of those, so if we can see the input-output, if we can make queries to the model, we can essentially see decode the watermark by secret queries. But for generative models, we don't see the input. We don't know what like if we preserve privacy, of course, we don't know what the user used to generate that image. So every image needs to contain the watermark. And this is what we call a distributional shift. So you have the initial distribution, and now you have the shifted distribution. And there's requirements for that. How do we find this shifted distribution? And basically, the key insight to our paper is, well, this is a machine learning problem, so let's use a machine learning solution. So I'm not going to delve into the details too much. This was a very technical paper. But essentially, what it boils down to is I have a message and a mapper, and this mapper builds support for all these different distributions by mapping to the input and parameters of the generator. Essentially, what I can do is I use this method called pivotal tuning, where I clone the generator, and then I generate images using the watermarked and the cloned generator to maintain fidelity. So I want to make sure that the watermark generator and the clone generator, that they're very close to each other in the output distribution space. And for that, I need a pivot, essentially. That's what we do. And then I also have a decoder to decode that watermark. And then the decoder is the key. And this key can now be used to watermark any generative algorithm that produces images. So you can use a diffusion, a transformer-based model. It doesn't really matter. And this is one of the key advantages, is that we make it learnable, and we can apply our watermarking strategy to any image generator. We can train with adaptive attacks. So you find an attack, it doesn't even matter. I can just include it in the key generation, generate a new key, and now I hope to be robust against that. If I cannot be robust, probably there is no strategy that is robust against this. And finally, it's scalable, because we don't require any training data, no retraining, nothing. We can do it with a pre-trained model, both finding the key and embedding it. Now, our watermark is effective. I will not delve into this, but like I refer to the paper for this. An interesting thing is that the detectability of our watermark scales, or any watermark for this matter, scales inversely with the diversity of the generated distribution. So a high variation distribution, the attacker will need a lot of samples to know whether their image is watermarked or not. And so here the numbers don't matter. I just put it up because I thought it was a nice graph. But essentially what we also show is that there is probably no watermark that is robust against a white box attacker. So you won't see open source watermarked models. However, black box attackers that don't have access to similarly sophisticated models cannot remove the watermark. And that includes also these watermark removal repositories that we've evaluated. However, ultimately, it's going to be how much capability does the attacker have. If they have a similar model, they can probably remove it in the long term. So as a summary, detectability scales with output diversity, which is a good result. Effectiveness, well, we can embed a lot of bits with almost no degradation in utility, and we vastly outperform everything that existed before. And it's scalable. no retraining, and for these style GANs, it takes almost no time. So our contribution is the first post-hoc learnable watermark for deep image generators that has some hopes of being robust. Yeah, so I refer to the paper. Again, thank you for taking the time, and yeah, that's it.